How did the Italian equivalent of John Deere turn into the coolest posters a middle school boy could put on his bedroom wall? The legend goes that a young Italian farm boy was always more interested in the equipment on the farm than actually farming. He ended up being a mechanic for the Italian armed forces during World War II, although not helping the trains always be on time. His time was more often spent coming up with creative ways to keep shitty Italian war machines running. Then after the war ended, he bought a bunch of shitty Italian war machine surplus and started building tractors. Business was good, he was making bank, and he started buying badass sports cars. He took a brief interest in racing, and when I say brief, he made it through 2/3 of a race before crashing through the wall of a cafe and ordered a glass of wine from the cafe owner to toast his retirement from racing. Now, to the part of this story that we can't separate fact from fiction for certain, but is still one of the best parts of the story, is when our illustrious tractor manufacturer, after owning many Ferraris, had purportedly grown quite tired of how unreliable they were. As a result, drove to Ferrari, demanded to speak to Enzo himself, and tell him face to face how big of a pile of crap his cars were, and informed Enzo that he was going to start his own car company and build cars that weren't trash. And with that, Ferruccio Lamborghini stormed out and went from making tractors to making tractors and also the most ridiculous automobiles ever built. Now, we don't know if that exchange between Lamborghini and Ferrari ever really happened, but in 1963, Enzo started a company with the intentions of building the best grand touring car you could possibly build. Now, where Alfa Romeo and Jaguar, Porsche, and Ferrari all had their main focus in racing, due to that time Lamborghini got princess parking at a cafe, he had no interest in building a car to race. He just wanted to build something that was stupidly fast, comfortable, and luxurious. So he started shoving V12s into sexy bodywork and charging lots of money for them. And to maybe support the stories of his feelings towards Ferrari, in addition to getting a badass car when you bought a Lamborghini, you also got some badass customer service. If your car broke down, Lamborghini would pay to send a mechanic at their own expense on a plane if they had to go fix it. And that mechanic would also bring you a letter of apology. Turns out that helped sell cars. The 60s were an amazing decade for the automotive industry, and Lamborghini was making bank, being the first manufacturer to really build high-performance status symbols solely for the purpose of being high-performance status symbols and not to fund racing aspirations. So it turns out rich people like Lamborghini who actually buy these cars don't give a shit how many races it's won. They just care about the numbers. The number of cylinders, the top speed number, and the number on the price tag. Really just want something that screams, look at me and how stupidly rich I am, when they pull up to parties in the Hollywood Hills. But the next decade rolled around and the 1970s were much less hospitable to horsepower. An energy crisis hit, emission standards went up, the global economy slowed down, and it turns out that exorbitantly expensive, extravagant exotics that were as economical as God damn it, I really thought I was onto something there. Something that gets really bad fuel economy that starts with E. The Enterprise? The space shuttle? That might work, but then people would think that was maybe talking about the aircraft carrier and that was nuclear and that's pretty efficient, so you get my point. Lamborghini's financials weren't doing great and he ended up selling pretty much everything by 1974. And while the car company continued to exist and selling cars all through the decades, arguably the most iconic car the brand ever built was unveiled the year I was born in 1990 on the same stage as the Dodge Stealth by automotive legend and man with the coolest name fucking ever, Lee Iacocca. What was the former president of Ford and current president of Chrysler doing unveiling the Lamborghini Diablo? Well, a couple years earlier, Chrysler fucking bought Lamborghini in 1987 for like $25 million, which is pocket change even back then. So that Lamborghini Diablo poster you got from the Scholastic Book Fair when you were a kid was a fucking Dodge. You want to know what Chrysler's claim to fame was in the mid-80s and early 90s? The minivan. That's what Lee Iacocca resurrected Chrysler with. The Dodge Caravan. And while Chrysler's ownership of Lamborghini was short-lived, I do find it funny that the not-so-humble beginnings of the iconic supercar company were built parallel to farm equipment, and its public resurrection as the most ridiculous ride for the rich was alongside the minivan. And at the end of the day, whether or not the legend of Lamborghini building an entire car company specifically out of spite for Enzo Ferrari is true or not, well, that really doesn't matter, because no other origin story would be as acceptable for a car company as outrageous as Lamborghini.